All right, on exit slip 413 here, our job is to be able to use absolute value to find distance between points on these coordinate grids. Okay, so we're going to kind of show some things and then talk about kind of more an abstract way with absolute value that you can do this and you don't even need the grid. Okay, so the first one here, I've got these 2 points, -2, -1, and -2, 3. So I'm going to go ahead and graph those down here. -2, -1 would be down here. And -2, 3 would be right here. Okay, my job is to find the distance between these ordered pairs. So when I'm looking down here, I can just count and the distance, so I can count spaces. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I know the answer is 4. Okay, it is 4 apart. I can see it right on my grid. But what we were teaching yesterday is to try to do this a little more abstractly. Can I do it without having the grid here? How can I know that these are 4 apart? Okay, so when I look at this, what we're looking for is, see how the x are both -2 on the x coordinate there? So they're both over -2. We know x goes left and right. So that means they're both on this same, I always talk about, they're on the same street, or they're on the same line here. If they're both -2, they both go over 2. And then what's different is their y coordinate. One's at a 3, because this one went up 3, and this one went down 1, so it's a -1. So once I see that they're on the same street, because they're both, the x coordinates are the same, they're both over -2. Okay, so they're on the same street. So now all I need to do is look at their absolute value. And I see that one of these is negative and one of these is positive. That means one went down below the x and one went above the x. So that means that we've got to add them. If one is negative and one is positive, so I can say the absolute value of -1 plus the absolute value of 3, because it's positive, okay, and I know the absolute value of -1 becomes positive. Distance from 0, how far is this from the 0 line, or the x-axis in this case? It's 1 away, and then we know it's 3 away. This one's 3 away here. So look at the distance. This is my 0 line, we call it. This is what we're comparing to. I know we're down at a -1 here, but the distance to that line is a +1. And the distance to this, from this point here, is a +3. So it's simply absolute value. It's distance to that 0 line there. So really, this just becomes 1 plus 3. And so I can do it abstractly and know it's 4 apart, because these are on the same street. I'm able to do that because they're on the same, x is both -2 in that case. So I just look at their y's. Again, the rule, if one's negative and one's positive, we know they're on opposite sides. So I have to add their distance to get that total distance apart that they are. So they're 4 apart. Okay, so this one, we can do the same thing here. All right, so I'm going to erase. So make sure we'll have these things written down. Probably smart to write and see so I can visualize these and see how far they are apart. Okay, next one is -2, 3. So -2 up 3, which we already had a point there, but we're going to do another one there. And then 3, 3. So this one I'm going over 3, up 3. Okay, so this time it's a little bit different. I still see they're on the same street, but the street's going this way, not up and down like it was last time. This time what I notice is their y coordinates are the same. See how they're both 3? That means they're both up 3 on the y. So that means they're on the same street if those are the same. So all I have to look at is the absolute value of the x's of the other one. And I see one's negative and one's positive. So again, if this is my 0 line, what I'm comparing to, see, this is the absolute value here. We're on the negative side. So this is the absolute value of -2. That means the distance from here to here is 1, 2. That actually turns positive, right? It's 2 away from there. And this is the absolute value of 3, because it's 1, 2, 3 away. Okay, it's 3 over, so the absolute value of 3. So my expression would be the absolute value of -2 plus the absolute value of 3 equals 5. Okay, because all it is this 2 plus this 3. And I combine those, they're 5 apart. All right, so I can do it with absolute value. Again, in both these cases, see how one's been negative and one's been positive? And that means they're on opposite sides. That means I got to add the distance between them. Okay? So again, something we've never done before. Takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay? All right, the next one we're going to do abstract. All right, we're not going to even graph it here. So I've got the coordinates 3, -1, and 3, -4.5. And the first thing I notice is the x is both 3. So I know it's on the same street. So what I've got here is -1 and -4.5. Okay, so notice they're both negative. Okay, so in this case, I do kind of want to show it here. We're over 3 up 1, or down 1, excuse me. Over 3 down 1, and over 3 down 4.5. Notice now they're in the same quadrant. These were both negative, which means this time I'm going to actually subtract their absolute values. And you have to put the one that's going to end up bigger first when we subtract. So I would have the absolute value of -4.5, 4.5, minus the absolute value of -1. And notice this time I subtract them because they're in the same quadrant. I'm not adding and going over into another quadrant. So the absolute value of -4.5, remember, is my distance to this 0 line. So you see the absolute value of -4.5 actually equals 4.5, right? Okay, it's 4.5 away from there. And this, the absolute value here, is the absolute value of -1, which actually equals 1. That's 1 away. So if I take this 4.5 and take away this 1, that tells me the distance left in between there. So this actually just becomes 4.5 minus 1, which equals 3.5. They are 3.5 apart in this case. Sorry, I forgot to write that one in there. But notice on this one, since they're both negative, that means they're in the same quadrant. I'm not adding, I'm subtracting to find the difference between them. They're closer together. And I can visually see that they're 3.5 apart. All right? So eventually you won't need this because you'll learn that and you'll just trust and know that these work once you understand that concept. Now the last one, we've got 11s and 32, so we can't even graph it. Okay, and that's intentional, so we can go ahead and see if you can do this without graphing it and actually just counting it. Again, notice they're both -11. Visualizing that, they're both -11, and then they're going to do some different things from there. So they're both on this street out here. So since they're the same, I can look at the other coordinate there, and I would have the absolute value of 9. And notice one is positive and one is negative. So they're on opposite sides. So we need to add them to get their total distance. So the absolute value of 9, sorry, that's a positive 9, plus the absolute value of -32 will get me the total distance between there. And I know this turns positive, and so it's just 9 plus 32, and we get 41. And if you kind of just visualize that, if I go up 32, or excuse me, down 32 and up 9, I've got to add those together to get that total. So they're a long ways apart, and they'd be 41 apart. All right, so very, very new concept here, and see if you can understand how absolute value actually can find that for you.